absolutely.
Yeah,
100%.
testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
We're good.
Brilliant.
And we're recording.
Wicked. Welcome to Tom and Jack having the crack, an irreverent look at the week's politics and news. So, this Ukraine thing's not going away.
No, it'll go on for years, will it?
Yeah, the ramifications of it, you
Yeah.
would think.
But the war could go on for
Yeah, I mean,
3 years. The Iraq war went on. It was 10 years, wasn't it?
yeah, I mean, it depends when you define an end, doesn't it?
Mm.
Because, like I think you said last week, that when you're dealing with a small force, an ideology, a dedicated people, you know, when does that end for them?
Have you seen too where the president he's on social media? He's on all the social media, and he's saying to people, if you want to go and fight in the Ukraine,
Yeah,
just get in a train, come along,
yeah,
bring a gun.
yeah.
It's, it's kind of interesting though, because I remember like reading about the Spanish Civil War.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people from all over the world went and fought in that.
George Orwell, Hemingway went.
Yeah, Hemingway went. So there's a little element to that to it. And the other thing I was reading that's unbelievable is he has loads of people helping him with geolocating. Have you heard about this?
Now go on.
Do you know what geolocating
Yeah,
is? So
yeah, yeah.
the people. So basically, everybody is tracking all the tanks, all the soldiers, all the Russian military are being tracked online, and the information is being fed back to the president by, you know, an ad hoc group of people who are just computer literate, I suppose.
Well, have you heard about the guy who was tracking Elon Musk's
Yeah.
plane? He's now tracking Russian oligarchs as they move
Around the world.
across the world, and what you can sort of see it on Twitter, them sort of fleeing, like just like a red arrow, just leaving Russia and going to Europe and United Arab Emirates and America, and yeah, it's an interesting aspect of this whole conflict, because I think social media during the Arab Spring,
Yeah.
it was like Twitter is facilitating this, Facebook is facilitating this, and now we're at a point with social media where it's actually quite state governed. So it's actually been used as a misinformation tool, like in Russia, definitely. And it's interesting that Zelensky's finding a role for it.
To use it, in the other way. And I think Putin has banned Facebook and Twitter now in Russia. So
Yep.
it's turning on him. He thought he had control of those things, and now they're turning on him. But I love this idea that people all around, like that guy in America, you know, people from all over the world are helping.
Yeah.
In this sort of way, you know.
It's an interesting thing, because on the one hand, it feels like obviously it's a very serious situation, and you're seeing some of hospitals being bombed now and schools, and it's, actual war crimes have been documented and committed, which is another interesting thing. There's like 100,000 smartphones pointed at a war crime, so it's like, do you want some evidence? Yeah, we've got some evidence.
Yeah, well, the weird thing, I think this is kind of strange. Like there'll be more evidence, but more cameras, but it almost seems like. Okay, even when you watch the news and you see war on it, it doesn't seem as real as if you were there. Now, I've never been there, but obviously it doesn't seem. But I think it seems even less real.
It does.
Through social media.
I completely agree, and I think Zelensky's done some amazing things in terms of galvanizing support, and I'm sure he's optimistically got one eye on what happens after this and how Ukraine has a role in the international community and joining NATO, etc., etc. And he's doing a brilliant job of it. But it does make it seem more cartoony.
Yeah, more sort of virtual world rather than real world.
Yeah, like him giving. I mean, that quote obviously has been around the world of like, "I don't need a ride, I need ammunition." But it seems like something Steven Seagal would say in a film about a war.
Yeah,
it's not.
Well, I suppose it's scripted to a degree, isn't it? He's probably writing.
That's been something that's come out quite a lot. Is that because he's got and he's not just got a comedy background, he's got an acting background, a writing background, and apparently it's a very conscious thing.
I'd well believe that, yeah, 100%. But all politics like that. It's kind of funny now, I suppose one way of thinking it, if we had social media and stuff in previous wars, like particularly World War II, like there would have been loads of memes and, little videos like remixes of Churchill saying...
Yeah, is a meme like a French meme?
Like a French
Bonjour, je m'appelle Meme. Comment ça va?
I've revealed how rarely I use that word there, haven't I? That's the first time I've ever said it. I'm trying to pretend I know stuff like this.
For anyone who's not aware, me and Jack are 102. That's the truth. Yeah, but it's interesting because it's one way of looking at it is it's downplaying how serious it is. Another way of looking at it is it's actually helping to galvanize global support, which ultimately is the goal in helping
for the Ukraine. Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel like Russia have got even support within their own country anymore.
No, they're lying to the people in their country. I read a great article during the week where in the New Yorker, and I was kind of basically saying a lot of people in Russia didn't even know it was happening.
Yes.
They're not being told it's happening. Like it's completely illegal to broadcast anything of it. And a reporter was in Moscow in the city centre, and people were just going about their business, quite oblivious to what was going on.
There was an interview with a banker that I think's gone in a few places. It might have been in that New Yorker article, but I read it somewhere else, that they were doing like an earnings report or something, and someone interrupted the annual report to be like, we've just gone to war. And these big financial institutions that you think would have some connection into government and have some awareness of what was going on normally, they was like, the fuck?
Well, they're saying the soldiers didn't even know they were going to be going to
A lot of them told to be on training exercise.
Yeah. It's just, it's bizarre. It's a very tricky game of chess, like, because on the one hand, you have everybody calling for intervention, and, should America and Europe and everybody intervene, but like intervention just escalates it.
Yeah. And did you see Biden's State of the Union?
No.
It was.
I read bits of it.
I mean, he didn't. He pulled a decent PR move, I think. So he was the second president, I think, since Reagan to bring a foreign dignitary to the State of the Union, and it was the Ukrainian ambassador, and he obviously got a standing ovation, and everyone was like, well, very brave, but he didn't make any commitments of any kind.
Yeah.
About what America was going to do, and he just actually pulled a big Biden gaffe. He was saying how brave the Iranian people are.
The Iranian,
which is probably true.
Yeah, the Iranian people are very brave.
Yeah, just not in a global conflict this minute.
Yeah.
Or at least not one the news coverage is willing to give any airtime to. But it was hilarious because he was obviously trying to have this soundbitey moment for himself, and then just Bidened it up.
Biting it up by doing that.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see if many non-Ukrainians would go over and fight.
It would be, wouldn't it? Because that would be in this era of virtue signaling where Gal Gadot's recording Imagine, and it's very trendy for a celebrity to do a black and white, like, "Dear Mr. Putin." Like, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? If you really want to virtue signal that hard, pick up a Kalashnikov
and head over.
Yeah, because like you say, there were public figures in bygone eras who did exactly that.
Hemingway and Orwell, they both fought in the Spanish Civil War, didn't they?
Yeah.
Hemingway wrote the book.
Yeah,
for whom the bell
tolls. Yeah, and then George. I can't remember the book George Orwell wrote coming out of the back of it. But yeah, but they were both. I mean, George Orwell got famously because it's what book is it in? Because he writes really beautifully about getting shot in the neck and how it basically grazed his aorta. And he writes about fainting and sort of fading out of the world and coming back in and fading out, and in that moment realizing that it could all be over, but at least it was for something meaningful, and that was a good way of going. It's hard to imagine like Justin Bieber doing that.
Just who would write? Who'd be a writer? J.K. Rowling. No.
J.K. Rowling. Yeah. Do you know what? I reckon J.K. Rowling would be pretty handy in a fight.
She'd be going over and fighting.
If she's put up with the amount of abuse she's had on the internet for the last 2 years, I reckon she'd be all right.
She'd be good. I wouldn't know what to do if I went over.
Yeah. Do you ever think you think about that? Like if you were forced into military service?
Yeah.
For Ireland, you had to be there. Do you ever think about like, would I be any good? Would I be?
Well, what the Irish guys did in the Irish War of Independence and the Irish Civil War and the rising ambushes. That's what Irish people did. So that's what my relatives did. You hide, and when the trucks go by, you ambush them.
Yeah,
and that was
And
I think I could do that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm small, kind of
nippy.
You know what I mean?
Can fit in crevices.
You wouldn't see me.
Yeah.
Their big issue, though, too, I suppose, kind of similar to now, is they didn't have enough weapons.
Yeah.
That was a big problem to have. But, I had a good few friends who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they said, now I don't know if this actually, the way things are now in Ukraine would be very different to how they were in Iraq and Afghanistan at the start. But they basically said there was an awful lot of hanging around, not a lot happening, and then suddenly something would happen, but no one would have a clue what was actually happening while it was happening, and it would just be pure confusion.
Interesting.
Yeah, because there was a lot of those, how do you say it? UIDs? Or,
Yeah, because I always get confused with the IUD.
Have I said that right?
I probably.
They like where people just blow themselves
Yeah.
up and stuff like that. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what angle the guerrilla warfare takes in this.
Yeah, and if it pushes there, because I guess the big thing everyone's wondering at the moment is, will the international community step in first to prevent it becoming this ground war, guerrilla war, or will they just keep supplying Ukraine and then let Ukraine fight it out and
They just keep selling weapons. That's what they do everywhere else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what they just keep selling the weapons. The nuclear power plants is an interesting twist.
It was.
You know, that's the only thing I could see where intervention might have to.
Am I an idiot, or did you, before you saw that, did you know that you could bomb a nuclear power plant and it didn't just blow up?
Well, it depends on where you bomb, because I'd imagine the nuclear material,
It's like hidden.
it's not in a reservoir on the roof.
It's in your living room. They keep it out for best.
No, but like it'll be protected, and there's not a lot of nuclear material in these places.
Yeah.
Because you only need small amounts, but it's usually.
This is a nice way of you saying yes, I am an idiot.
Did you ever watch the Chernobyl?
It's fantastic, wasn't it?
Brilliant. Yeah. So I suppose it'd be buried under concrete. There's no what they do to bury it.
Yeah, and then you wonder, what was his? Is that just because? I'm always looking for where's the 3D chess move on Russia's part here.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate them, playing a long game. And I was thinking, what's the actual benefit of firing a rocket into a nuclear power plant and it not causing massive, huge devastation? What are you trying to illustrate?
Yeah, but you don't know whether he. Okay, did he have any say in that actual shooting of the rocket? Did they know what they were shooting at? Do you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of, friendly fire and different things like this. Like, everybody who goes to war ends up blowing up something they didn't mean to blow up. Like,
yeah.
I could be wrong, but like I'm sure the British and the Americans didn't intend to blow up schools and hospitals, but they do. Everyone does.
But they do.
But they do. Everyone ends up doing it, and I don't think they may. One of the things very interesting too is just the difference the way things are reported. Because particularly I always think that it's very interesting the difference between this and the Iraq War, because when it's a non-Western leader doing anything, they're always kind of branded as being a bit mentally unstable,
despotic.
They've lost the plot, but no one was like, when, Bush was like mission accomplished, no one was like, he's lost the plot, he's surrounded himself by yes men, he's out of touch. No one was saying that Blair had a messianic complex. Do you know what I mean? It's quite interesting how we brand these people differently.
Oh, yeah. That's a great example, because, Zelensky, I'm not saying you should look at him this way. But if this was the Iraq War or an Iranian conflict or somewhere, of the countries when we were younger, there's an argument you might say Zelensky's using his people as a shield. He's being irresponsible. He's asking them to die for a cause. He hasn't. There's other ways of interpreting.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because they're not. He's asking non-army people to fight.
Yeah,
it's kind of like one time. There was a debate about antisocial behaviour in Britain, and I think it was Boris, before he was Prime Minister, said if you see it, to intervene, and then the police came out and said don't. Yeah. You know what I mean? Ring us. Yeah. Don't be getting involved, you'll get hurt. Did you remember? I think it might have been when he was Mayor of London. He definitely is something about on the tubes, if you see any issues on the tube, and a police spokesman came out.
That is the ultimate Boris Johnson comment.
Yeah.
Because it's like this Etonian private school view of the world where, no, let's have a really good dust up and then shake hands and walk away.
Yeah.
Stop the bigger boys bullying the younger boys and get a blowjob out of it. And, it's good. Well, what if one of the bigger boys has got a knife?
Or a gun. But so the police came out and said, so I see what you mean there, yeah. I heard too that it's coming out now that he was involved with it probably already came out, but it's resurfacing again, that he was involved in the Panama Papers.
Zelensky?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Mate,
this is the other interesting thing, is he's getting lionized. And I thought, this is, from a comedian perspective, was like, has anyone checked his tweets?
Yeah.
Has anyone, what was, but the Panama Papers obviously is a much more serious version of that. But yeah, what is the background on this guy that the people who are so keen to lionize him You know, the things they wouldn't like about his past.
Well, I think one of the reasons why powerful men like war is I think war makes people look good who mightn't be that good. Like it's kind of. Did you ever hear the old Picasso one? Picasso didn't leave France during World War II, but he could have because he was rich, and a lot of rich people did. And afterwards, he became a bit of a national hero in France, and he became a bit of a symbol of French resistance. Now, Picasso was like, Jesus, would Picasso survive me too? I don't know. Like, I don't want to be saying too many bad things about Picasso. Yeah. But like, he was sleeping with an awful lot of prostitutes. Like that's on. You know, he was chasing women the whole time. And he had this quote that was great when he was kind of, how did he feel about being a bit of a national hero? And he sort of said, you know, he felt a bit strange by it because he never really saw himself as that type of person. And he said that during the war, he said it wasn't that he was behaving particularly well.
Yep.
It was just that others were behaving particularly worse. You know, he basically said like, I'm not a good guy. It's just like there was a lot of bad, worse people, and you know, I think there's an element of you know, like war can make a lot of people who aren't that good look good.
Yeah, you just don't commit an atrocity.
Just
and
yeah. So the bar gets a bit lower during wartime. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's an interesting, especially if you create a narrative around it. If you create a narrative around like the goalposts are just not to commit a war crime. Yeah, and that's the parameters of goodness, and then you get to win within those parameters you've created for yourself. Never mind that you've ruined your economy. Never mind that you drafted in civil. And I'm not saying you shouldn't draft civilian soldiers. I'm not saying you shouldn't worry about the economy later, but there are wider parameters for success you could look at if you chose to. But if you narrow the goalposts, it's a lot easier to be a good dude.
Yeah, it'll be. You're right though. It will be a tricky one because like it's very easy to get swept up in the romanticism and everything of the fighting and the whole lot. Yeah. You see, like Mike Tyson Fury saying that, you know, if it was England, he'd definitely be here. But there'll be a lot of families who'll be absolutely devastated that they had a son who decided they're going to go off and fight.
Oh yeah,
you know, it's a great book called The Plot Against America. Have you ever read that book?
I've heard of it. I've never read it.
I'm trying to think what the guy's name is, but the book is basically, the idea of the book is that Germany wins World War II. Right. But in the book, there's a guy. One of the characters to follow in the book is Canadian who moves from Canada to America to be drafted into the army to go fight the Germans. And he goes over. He's over there a week, gets shot in the leg, comes back paralyzed for life, and he's for the rest of the book, like he's dressing his wounds every day and everything, and he's 17 or 18, and it just shows you like the tragedy of that, getting caught up in wanting to fight evil and do that good thing, and then life destroyed.
I mean, I remember I don't know if you had any family fought in World War II. But I remember my granddad was just a lad from Leeds, and they all got drafted or conscripted. And he picked the Navy because he was one of these guys in British, cult society where he was very smart, but he was working class, so he wasn't ever going to go anywhere with his intellect. Yeah. So he was like, the Navy's got the best survival rate.
Is that true? Yeah.
It did. Well, during the World War II, at that time, the Navy had the best survival rate. So he's like, I'm going to go in the Navy because that's got the best survival rate.
Survival rate, right? That's clever.
And then he was an engineer, so he did pretty well. And obviously, people die left and right, so you get promoted and stuff. And he ended up being a chief petty officer, battlefield promotion. And he got awarded the Navy equivalent of the Victoria Cross for bravery because he took a German U-boat with like three other guys. Him and three other guys took a German U-boat. A pretty brave thing to do. Yeah. And he came back home, and the people who stay behind, they got promoted in the factories and in the offices and stuff. So he ended up working for a guy who was 4 years younger than him, who stayed behind, didn't go fight in the war. And when he was towards the end of his life, he was like telling me on his deathbed, basically, I can't tell you how devastating that is to go risk your life, and even if you survive, come back and be like, there's nothing for me. There's no real welcome. There's no real thank you. There's no real progression in society. Just even the ones who survive, life goes on beyond war, and you don't really get thanked for it. It doesn't really factor into the rest of your life.
Yeah, you're being used a little bit, to be fair.
Yeah.
You are being used a little bit.
So what you're saying about getting swept up in the romanticism,
yeah,
there's obviously things like that story where there's a very real thing of death, paralysis, wounding, all that stuff. But then even for the ones who make it back, 5 years after the war, 10 years after the war, are you going to have the position in society you think you should have? Or is the person who didn't fight going to be...
Yeah, and then, obviously there's the post-traumatic stress disorder too. The Falklands War was the one where more people committed suicide afterwards than died.
Really?
Battle. Yeah,
right.
yeah, the Falklands War. But there's also this thing too, you hear soldiers say, and I'm always... You'd often hear them say, if I can do this...
Yeah.
Once I go back to Civvy Street, is not what they call it. They say, once I go back to Civvy Street, I'll be able to do anything. And it's like, well, it's not really true because you're learning a completely different set of skills and a different way of behaviour.
And do you know what I think is interesting? Is probably once upon a time that was very true because hierarchies in society were probably more similar
militarized. Yeah.
Whereas now, they're probably at, I don't know, maybe more than any point in the last 200 years, whatever, maybe in human history, the divergence of what is valuable in the military compared to what is valuable in Civvy Street. You have to think about like traditional traits of masculinity, following orders, unquestioning allegiance to a hierarchy. They don't seem to be very valuable traits.
No, I think the biggest emotional intelligence and social skills are nearly the biggest two to do well in our society. They're two of the biggest. Now, I don't really know about maybe in the city and banking and that. It might be a little bit more, I've been reading a few books about that. and that seems to be still a bit more, if you've got a bit of an alpha male personality and adventure and that. But in a lot of other companies, it's you can't be going around like that.
No, not at all. And then also the entrepreneurial aspect. I think today, an entrepreneurial mindset, even if you work within a company, an entrepreneurial mindset is rewarded a lot more than just following
orders. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's changed. It's a tricky one. Like you see, you really see now, because it's the big enemy and everything, how everyone is quite into it. Like, but when it gets removed, when you're removed from it, you wouldn't be into it. Like,
no, it's actually interesting. You mentioned the big enemy there. Other interesting thing that happened in the State of the Union, no one wore a mask.
Right.
So no masks indoors, and Biden was talking about moving on
with the economy.
Yeah, and moving on from COVID, and it's been interesting with the Russia-Ukraine conflict that has taken up people's headspace. And it does feel like people are more willing to put COVID on the back burner, and I just find it interesting that it's just seems so relatively easy just to supplant one story with another, and people's fear and emotional fury about one thing can just get translated to something else so quickly.
Yeah, because I think we've limited emotional capacity. You can only be, it's hard to be in love with 10 people at the one time. Do you know what I mean? You can only be angry about, do you know what I mean? It's hard to...
You should go to some of the parties I go to.
It's hard to spread your kind of thing. Tell you what's funny though, someone said to me the other day that, we've just come out of a pandemic and now we're going to go into World War III. This kind of thing. Yeah. But like World War III wouldn't be as bad as the pandemic because the pubs would stay open. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah.
Like, at least you'd get out of the house,
100%.
It's very much the old world coming back again, isn't it? The fight. What do you think of the sanctions? One of the things I find with the sanctions is like, why weren't they doing that anyway?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean,
why were they allowed? All this corrupt money, blah blah blah. We're going to stop it. We shouldn't have been taking it in the first place.
Well, again, I think it's quite similar to the pandemic. It's about political expediency and convenience. So your parameters for what is acceptable are framed by the story you want to tell the public.
Yeah.
So when there was no pressure, it's like, we'll do as many deals as we want with Gazprom. That's fine. Oligarch money, propping up businesses, propping up venture capital firms, that's fine. Until there's a political narrative that is against that, which is you shouldn't be supporting Russia. It's very similar to cancel culture in a way that, like you said, all these companies were very happy to trade with Russia until they did something really horrific.
I've been reading a book about it, and Gazprom was in it about the Hermitage Fund. It's like a hedge fund that invested in Russia, and they had shares in Gazprom. I think it's kind of 1990s, early 2000s, and Gazprom kept selling off oil and gas fields very underpriced to family members. There was a lot of this going on, and like the levels of corruption in those companies.
And like you say, we've been fine with that for whatever,
Up until now.
Yeah, pretty much since, I mean, you could argue since, I guess, the Yalta stuff, but probably since Putin came into power and, you know, forged more economic ties with the West, ironically. Yeah, we've been fine with it. It's been propping up property prices around the world, propping up businesses, and then all of a sudden, just because the story changes,
we have to change. Yeah,
yeah,
it's the power of stories. It's very interesting, and it'd be like, will it happen with China now too? Where it'll have to happen too with China, because this the part of the reason he was able to play this hand was because of the economic interconnections.
Yeah, because taking away their trading with Europe. I mean, there's some reports estimating that inflation could go up to 70-80% in Russia.
Yeah.
Which would be like what happened after the revolution, like 1911, 1912 sort of thing. And yeah, I think you're right. I think the alliance with China will be really tested, because it's like, how ideologically bound up are we? And does Putin see them as ideologically bound up, or does he just see himself as so powerful and independent that, you know, does he think he needs China's backing globally? I mean, objectively he does, but does he think he does?
So you've read the Russian people then are in for a rough ride too, are they?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the oligarchs pouring their money out of Russia, I think, is a real bellwether, because without resources, he can't, you know, he's got very limited options for what he can do, because he can't ride out sanctions. He can't, just close the, circle the wagons and try and ride it out. He hasn't got any money to do it with, or backing to do it with. And then you wonder how long the Russian people are willing to put up with, because the prospect of a palace coup, I think, is becoming
more and more
real.
Yeah, and that's what they're hoping to achieve with it. And Abramovich getting rid of Chelsea.
That's the big news.
That's the big news. That was it's amazing how quick that happened, isn't it?
Yeah, to the point where you wonder if it'd been on his mind for a while, because it was almost instantaneous, wasn't it? It was in like a week of the conflict starting. He was like, "I'm going to get rid of it."
Yeah. He clearly thought he was in trouble. So whoever's advising him, I'm sure he probably knows more than we know.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He probably, I probably shouldn't say this, but he may well have a spy in the cabinet. You know what I mean? I don't want to be spreading rumours or conspiracy theories, but like there may be someone in the Tory cabinet who's like, blah 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 blah, and then someone's paying someone to tell that, and he's like hearing all that back. So.
That feels more likely than not, doesn't it? Because if there's going to be a coordinated wave, because it's happening in America as well, there's going to be a coordinated wave of going after Russian assets overseas.
Yeah.
You'd think, because British politicians, American politicians, German politicians, French politicians, they want that headline, but they don't really want to fuck off the business people who are bringing loads of money into the country. So you would think the best path for any government would be like, I'm going to seize all these assets. You might want to crystallize them.
Get
into cash.
That's really probably, I suppose that's the best case scenario for everybody, because then it helps your narrative because he's left.
Yeah.
So you're no longer being pushing, but you didn't actually have to do anything. So and I suppose doing something can get messy. How much of a hit do you think it would affect everyone's cost of living? I suppose there's no way of telling this. If we did cut all of this blood money out of our economy.
Well, it's the knock-on effect, isn't it? Because it's like, so the housing prices in, let's take a controllable aspect of it, like the housing prices in London, for example. So if you own property in London, the oligarch money coming out of London would have a pretty real impact, I think.
Crash the market.
Yeah. Which, if that's the thing you're using to set up retirement, or if that's the thing you're using to, help facilitate things like paying school fees, etc. If that's a big part of your financial holdings, that's going to have a very, very real impact on you. Because I guess the flip side would be people would say, well, it helps other people buy in.
Yeah.
But those other people have to have
money
to buy in.
Yeah, so if the property market collapsed, then everybody would realise that actually wages hadn't gone up in 15 years, and that the only reason anyone had been getting richer was because of their house
Yes.
inflating.
And also, even if you don't own a property in London, your pension is bound up in
Properties. Yeah.
So that's another very real. And you go draw your pension down, and you're like, whoops, that's 20% wiped off that.
Yeah, it could be a good time to announce the retirement age is 70 now. I don't think anyone would notice.
Slip it in. Just slip it under the war in Ukraine, new COVID variant. By the way, you have to work till you're 95. Have a good Friday. This has been Radio Boris.
Oh, that Putin is something else. You know what I mean?
He's causing your retirement age to go up.
To go up, yeah.
Yeah.
You heard the thing with Trump.
Yeah, go on.
So, I heard that Trump, you don't. He's not on the media as much anymore, but I heard he gave a speech and he mused. He mused that America could send planes over, attack the Russians, but have Chinese flags on the plane to convince the Russians that it was the Chinese attacking them, and then Russia and China would go to war and they would take each other out. You know. Obviously, we know he has a bit of a WWF background.
Yeah.
It's very much an Undertaker move.
Well, I was going to say more Triple H potentially, but yes.
It's very much a WWF move, you know what I mean? And then while they're fighting, Trump will come up behind him and hit him with a chair. You know what I mean?
And then you get thrown out of the cage, and you get thrown out of the cage, and Vince McMahon's just standing in Red Square like this. Do you know what's funny though is because things like that have happened in wars before.
Okay,
it's like Operation Mincemeat. I think they made a movie out of it. And that was a huge coordinated wave of misinformation where the British government got a German soldier's body couldn't be decomposed too long and had to be like injured in the right ways with the right ammunition from the right battlefield, and they stuffed a bunch of fake Allied plans in his pockets.
Okay, yeah.
And then they had to wait for the tides to be in the right place at the right time for him to be washed up at a point in northern Africa. And it was basically a fake plan that the Allied army were going to invade through Africa and go up into Europe through Italy.
Yeah.
And it worked. It got the Rommel to divert just enough forces to southern Italy to open up a bit more of the area around northern Europe, which is where they ultimately ended up invading through. But that on paper sounds crazy. It's basically a drama production. Like that's like write fake, documents and give this guy like a fake name and a fake, the whole thing is like a drama, like a theatre production, which apparently played quite a big role in winning World War II.
Yeah, well, it's a kind of misinformation. There's always things called leaks as well, is where you know that someone's a spy, but rather than confront them, you purposely feed them misinformation so that they start passing it back as real information.
Yeah. The Trump plane thing is interesting though. I like the idea that he clearly thinks everyone is as gullible as he would like them
to be. Oh, he thinks people are completely stupid. Like
yeah. But I guess he's got away with it because I guess at every turn in his life he's pulled off things like that.
Yeah, he's just because he's never told the truth, and it has worked for me. He has completely gotten away with it. Like in some ways, America would get away with it.
They would
because if the guy implemented, they are the bigger army. Have you seen this one? The how much money they spend per year on the military
in America? No, go on.
So I think I was reading that in the last year, Russia has spent 65 billion.
Mm-hmm.
NATO countries, excluding America, 200 billion,
mm-hmm.
and America 700.
Perfect.
So like it's America and NATO against Russia is
foregone.
Yeah, it's a complete. But the collateral damage would be unbelievable.
Yeah, and America never really the whole thing after World War II is they never really want to have to
do that.
Unleash the power of it's like Roosevelt. It's a walk soft and carry a big stick global policy.
Yeah,
you want to know we could, but you never really want to have to
use it. Yeah. It's too powerful to use. Like the one thing though, if it did happen, wages would go up and house prices would go down because like there'd be an awful lot of less people living in the world. Like Jesus Christ.
Maybe Greta Thunberg's like pulling for it. Maybe Greta Thunberg's like
Sort of could help with climate change
climate yeah.
too, yeah.
You get rid of a few nuclear mushroom clouds, and then a few million less people. Greta would be thrilled.
Yeah, and I suppose that's another thing we're kind of keeping the eye off a ball with that too. My brother was telling me there's really bad flooding in Australia now as well.
They had more rain in a week in Brisbane than we have in London in the whole year.
Is that what they had?
It's like 7,000 millimetres of rain in Brisbane in a week, and we get 6,000 millimetres annually.
And I think it was something like 10 years ago they had the same flooding, and they were told it was once in 100 years, and now 10 years later it's happened again. Amazingly, Australia politics is amazing in that they're quite anti-climate, doing anything about climate change.
Interesting.
Which
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's very...
Because of mining.
They've completely linked any kind of action on tackling climate change to loss of jobs.
Yeah.
Completely.
Which is kind of what America did for a long time as well, with the oil and gas industries.
Yeah, well, you haven't read Cokeland, have you? Charlie Koch?
No.
Oh man, he almost single-handedly held back climate change. The book is just, he's a phenomenal person, but
didn't he help come up with the language of climate change? Because previously wasn't it called global warming, and that was seen as more scary? And then I'm pretty sure it was a Republican marketing strategist that probably could have been funded by him, came up with the word climate change.
Probably. Like he funded so much, and he was so well organized. Like he did things where he went around the country looking at, you elect judges and stuff like that in America. Like they giving money to the judges that would be more likely, analysing judges' decisions and working out which judges were more likely to favour the oil industry and giving them money. And the other thing he was doing too is amazing, that he got away with it. Like he's skimming all the time. So when you say you have an oil field and I buy oil off you.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to send my truck, pull the oil out, and I'm going to tell you how much I've taken out.
Yeah.
And then I pay you. So I took out 100. He had all his workers trained to take more than they said they took.
And it adds up over time.
Oh, millions.
Jesus.
Millions. Constant skimming. And that was when he started off. Like he was at all. It's an incredible book to read. Like he did a lot of hostile takeovers of companies.
Yeah. I knew that about him.
And the people he took over said that after talking to him, they had a 15-minute meeting with him, and they came out, they'd be furious with him, like, oh, he's trying to do this, trying to do that, and they go talk to him. And then they'd say after 15 minutes talking to him, they left the room knowing one thing for certain: they wanted to work for him.
Yes!
And you're like, this guy's charisma.
Isn't that amazing how that is like the single defining factor, it seems like anyway, in people who from the outside seem like horrific people who get away with shit. Whether it's the Koch brothers, Trump, Putin, Harvey Weinstein, everyone's got a version of that story where, like, yeah, but you weren't around them.
Yeah.
You didn't know them. Like, you didn't feel what it was like to be in their presence.
Well, the Harvey Weinstein, because the people who worked for him said he was very exciting to work for, because he just got things done, like and made things happen that just didn't seem possible.
Yeah. Yeah, say what you will about Harvey Weinstein, he delivers on his promises.
I guess it all comes down to, at heart, I think I said it before, like everyone has this thing in them where they want to win, they want success, and I think, if someone creates a wave that you get to surf, that creates a degree of personal success for you, it then becomes harder to see the bad things happening. It becomes easier to look away
100%.
and pretend you don't see the things that are happening.
I mean, like, we've both done corporate jobs. Everything's on a spectrum, right? But we've probably all been around things that, not saying like morally wrong things, but things that were like, I don't know, should we be asking people to work that long hours? Should we be putting the client under that much pressure? Should we be paying someone this wage? We've all been around these decisions that, like you say, ultimately lead to personal success. But at the time, you don't question them as much. You can. It's amazing how quickly you can rationalize away a poor decision.
And there'll be people in Russia who became rich because of Putin.
Yeah.
And they'll think he's great guy. Can't believe all the bad things they're saying about him. You know what I mean?
And by all accounts, his circle's getting smaller and smaller, so it's just those people
around him.
left.
Did you see him with the pilots?
No.
Oh, jeez. He had a press conference where he's at a dinner with all these women pilots for Aeroflot. And they're all a bit worried because Russia's been banned from so much airspace. But it's a very weird sort of
Image.
photo op, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's just him with a load of good-looking women having a lunch, but he's given quite a serious kind of speech, you know?
Yeah. Again, I think that's the kind of thing that it's like bunker mentality. So everyone in this room agrees. So I'm just gonna. There's nothing weird here. Nothing incongruent about this image. I've just got these wonderful Russian workers.
Yeah.
And I'm a wonderful Russian premier, and everything's fine.
There's a song about him. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Pop song that it's two very good-looking Russian women, and the kind of song is, "I need to find a man like Putin."
No, it's not.
Yeah. and it's like, sort of like, it's a catchy little number, like.
But it is.
And it's about, I need to find a man like Putin, he's not a drunk, he'll look after you, he won't hurt you.
Can take on a grizzly bear.
Yeah.
With his manly chest hair.
Need to find a man like Putin,
I mean, do you reckon other world leaders get annoyed by that? Like, do you reckon? Do you think Biden's like, no one's ever written a song about me?
No.
Do you not think it's like late up at night thinking, I wish a pop star would write a ditty?
But has there been songs about anyone?
I mean, Barack Obama got name checked in a lot.
Oh well, there's a dance track for Barack Obama. I love it. Like, I listen to it running, right?
Right.
It's called Hope Remix. I think they're a German techno. No, I think it's UK, actually, UK house. Voice tone, right? And you know that speech he gave in Chicago? I think it was before, on the election campaign.
Yeah.
And it's basically the speech where it's like, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, Asian, Hispanic, you can make it in America. And we are not a collection of red states and blue states. We are the United States. And it's that speech with like pumping dance music. And it is unbelievable. Like, it'll get you, like, if you're going running, you'll get injured. You'll run too fast. I have a bad back because of that song. It just gets you too carried away. But it's awe-inspiring.
How long ago does that feel?
Oh,
that he was in. Like, it felt like the world. I mean, in a lot of ways, I reflect on that time and think how, because one of the things I dislike at the moment about modern politics is like how smug people are in their opinions and how certain they are. And obviously, we were a lot younger, but the level of surety and just blinkered confidence, I feel like the left and centre left had during that period. Like, nothing's ever going to go backwards. I remember all the rhetoric when I was living in America. I remember all the rhetoric around like Republicans may never get back in. They may never get back in because of changing demographics and there's fewer white voters, etc. As if like the only people who ever value fiscal conservatism, are older and not particularly welcoming to new Americans. And I think it's a salutary lesson. I think we've lived through an interesting little curve. Maybe not a significant one, but it's an interesting little curve, maybe.
Yeah, I look back in that 2008. I was very excited.
Yeah, same.
And I genuinely believed there was a lot of positive change coming. And now I look back and I think I was naive as anything, because the older people around me weren't optimistic or hopeful at that time. Like, it was all young, and it just kind of, it just shows things are very hard. It's very hard to change things.
Yeah,
I remember Clinton and Blair. Yeah, like the excitement then. And everything seems incredible then.
Until they get in, and it's like you can go back to like Kennedy, can't you? And be like, until they get in and they realize they are not the ones in charge, really. Yeah. Whether it's any Western democracy, no one person's in charge.
Well, I do feel that, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. I was, what age was I? Was it 97
97
Blair got
Blair,
in,
yeah.
yeah. So Blair got in 97. What age was I in 97? I was 15. And yeah, I think the 10 years Blair was in, I felt he changed loads. I felt the country completely changed. Like, you know, well, peace came to Northern Ireland, which seemed unimaginable.
What's the narrative in Ireland about that? Do they credit sort of Blair Clinton as being a big part of that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's well, George Mitchell was Clinton. Clinton sent someone like Clinton plays a big part in it because America got fully involved.
Yeah.
George Mitchell was sent over. There's a lot of different people involved in it. So John Hume is considered a big part of it in Ireland. He was you know, Republican politician, but he wasn't part of the IRA. But he did go and speak. He's the first kind of respectable politician who went and spoke to the IRA. Then Albert Rounds, John Major kind of kicked it off. Charlie High, everyone kind of is given a bit. Bertie Ahern, but I suppose Bertie Blair, they still write about it in Irish papers now. Like they're still kind of going, who really did it? But like, you have to say Clinton had a big role in it.
Because Clinton's image obviously was tarnished by the Lewinsky, obviously in the impeachments, and I always wonder what if Iraq hadn't happened. I wonder what Tony Blair's
what would have brought him down. What would have tarnished his reputation?
Well, obviously, I think the Iraq War changed Tony Blair's legacy.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And he went from being this, like you say, a lot of interesting things happened under his watch, and Peace in Northern Ireland was one of them. Funding of education tripled, provision for working families. Like, there's a lot of interesting things that government did. Some less good things, like taking regulation off the city to pay for a lot of it. But they were following the Clinton model.
Yeah, the third way.
The third way, exactly. Yeah, third way into more debt. It's like that meme of like straight ahead is financial security, hard right towards political expediency. But if Iraq hadn't happened, I wonder if he'd be remembered as like one of the better,
He'd be remembered as one of the best.
Yeah.
He'd be remembered as one of the best. I know. I spoke to a woman once who was retired, who worked in Downing Street in the office, and had worked for all different leaders, you know. But she had been there when Tony Blair was there, and she said they all loved Tony Blair, and she said he was unbelievable in that, you know, he would go through the office. He would know everybody's name. You know, he'd talk to you, how you, Tom? You know, anything you told him about your family, he'd remember. So the next time, you know, if you said, "Oh, my dad's birthday is tonight," and the next time he'd meet you, go, "Oh, how was the birthday?" and all that. And they said like he was incredible, like in with those social skills and everything. And she said they all loved him until Iraq.
Yeah.
Like after that, you know, the warmth to him did drain away.
Because I think that is the truth about British leaders in particular. Do you have a term limit in Ireland
for
the Premier?
No, not really.
No.
You can be. No one's ever been. The first guy, Eamon de Valera, God, he was a long time. He might have been 15 years because he was like such a national hero for winning the War of Independence and that. No, there's no real. You can go on.
Because I think it's interesting in Western countries where you don't have a term limit.
Yeah.
Because you basically do. It's like that quote in Batman, isn't it? Like, you die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. No one's ever really gone out of British politics. It doesn't feel like
it's
in a good.
Churchill says all politics ends in failure. Like,
yeah,
and it does because you lose. There's no unless you retire, like, and no one.
No one gives it up.
Everyone's like, it's so hard to give it up.
Of course it is, because you feel like if Blair was on like an American system, got in 97, he'd have been out before the Iraq War.
Yeah.
And then you wonder, like, that 8-year chunk, what he would have been.
Oh, it would have been considered very good.
Remembered for.
I suppose the politicians, and they all do it. Blair said he was going to, you know, and he kept pushing it back. Charlie Haughey in Ireland kept saying he was going to retire, and he kept pushing it back. But I suppose it's like someone saying they're going to give up drinking, you know.
Yeah.
I'm going, definitely now. I'll give it up in January, you know, and it's just, it keeps getting pushed back and pushed back.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because it's too intoxicating.
Yeah.
And then Gordon, I remember feeling, even before I started doing comedy, I remember feeling really sorry for Gordon Brown because he just looks, if Spitting Image was going to design a politician to sit in a chair, it's like, he looks like he's made out of clay.
Yeah.
and has the personality of someone who's made out of clay. I remember every time he tried to smile, especially coming off that Tony Blair thing of, like you said, he had all these amazing soft skills that endeared him to people, and there was good and bad at that. Like, they were amazing at manipulating the media, but then they became obsessed with the media cycle. So it was good and bad, and Gordon Brown was maybe more of a straightforward policy guy.
Yeah, he was a policy genius. Gordon Brown's a genius, and it would have been brilliant policy. He'd be a brilliant politician in another age.
Exactly.
Yeah, the media age, but like just
Pre-TV, like 50s,
Yeah.
40s, 50s.
yeah, just but it does. There was a guy in Ireland too, Brian Cowan, and he tried to not engage with the media because he knew he was so bad at it. That
Well, I think that's an amazing thing the Democrats are doing with Biden. I mean, it does show you the level of media, like where a lot of the political allegiance is in most of the media, outside of Fox. But obviously, Fox is the biggest news network in America, but outside of Fox, because they're just letting him get away with turning up once every couple of months
to say something.
to say
Yeah.
and in the meantime, just not saying much of anything. I mean, it's pretty rare to have a State of the Union during a global pandemic on the eve of what could be a very significant conflict, and for it to not say anything, like for an hour, just to not really say much.
But maybe he's right. Maybe it can be done because so Clinton, Blair will say Obama, some of them really, and Trump, okay, some of them really courted me, but they were very good at it.
Very good at it. Yeah.
Very good at it, so it's advantageous to them. But the way like you'd see in Hollywood and stuff like that, there was always kind of this idea that you had to really court the media to be successful and stuff like that. But there's guys who come along, they didn't court the media.
Daniel Day-Lewis, someone like that.
Yeah. So like, I suppose it can be done. It's just we haven't really seen it.
It's so
done.
antithetical to the last 20 years of
But someone will come along who just be like, yeah, don't do the media.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But I think what's interesting though is he. I would argue between Trump and Biden, they might have done more to damage the American presidency than anyone in the 20th century.
I think those kind of comments are crazy.
Go on. I'll give my argument and you can refute them.
Right.
So I think Trump, on the one hand, illustrated that how much damage can be done by the way an American president talks. Even if policy doesn't change that much, you can have a huge impact on perceptions of America, how people react to one another. And I would argue he had more of an impact on how Americans treat one another than any more intellectual, thoughtful, policy-driven president maybe 50 years prior to him. And I think Biden's doing a damaging job because he's illustrating to people that in terms of getting things done and in terms of how the world is shaped, that office is not the key piece of that puzzle. The Supreme Court is more important. Senators are more important. Lobbyists are more important. Like, your president can go hiding for 6 months and
but that's right. Like, because it's not a dictatorship. The president of America shouldn't be all powerful. Like,
No.
and the Constitution is designed.
It's built that way, checks and balances,
Yeah.
But I would still contend, I think prior to that, for example, Clinton, Obama, even like the Bushes, the presidency was put up as a more important part of that triumvirate of the judicial, legislative, executive.
But that's bad.
I'm not saying.
I don't think that's good. I think it's better to be in balance with the other two.
But I still would. I can concede that point, and I think that could be very well a good outcome from it.
Yeah.
But between them, they might have devalued or depowered that executive branch. Now, that might be a good thing, but I do think they've probably devalued it below where it was before, say, Bush's, Clinton.
But that'd be a good thing. Bush was horrific. Like, Bush over...
Junior.
Yeah. Because he... Obviously, there's the war, but the amount of money he spent, like, that he signed off for the award to those companies, Halliburton and...
Yeah.
Is it Blackwater or whatever, like...
Blackwater, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the private military firm.
Yeah. So, and they were, who...
So they didn't have to report American deaths.
Yeah, so they're sending all that, so he over, that's too powerful.
Yeah, and he through Dick Cheney expanded executive powers.
Oh, massively, yeah,
radically.
yeah, massively.
Yeah, because I didn't know that. They're like, before Reagan, it was quite hard for a president to do anything. And then Reagan's government was a big part of like loosening, and getting legal, because there's a lot in the American Constitution, because it's relatively new, it's 200 odd years old. There's a lot of legal grey area and interpretation of what a president can and can't do. And the Reagan administration helped prise apart some like grey areas. Like, no, we can do this. And then Dick Cheney like drove a bus through it.
Just went bigger.
Yeah.
I think they've always had the president always has a lot of power with foreign policy, isn't it? That's the one area that they have.
Yeah, which is why war's very appealing.
Yeah.
Because only Congress can declare a war, so they can't be technically at war without Congress. But foreign policy-wise, where they invest, where they send troops, even if it's not for a war, but for a peacekeeping operation, or where they build up military bases, etc., that's all within the president's purview, which is why Halliburton can get paid.
Do you think at some level, human beings, none of us have the emotional capabilities to handle power?
Interesting. I think it depends on the size of the group.
Yeah.
So I think if it's a family unit, right, or like if 6 of you, you can have enough empathy amongst 10 people to be like, oh, I don't want to hurt Karen, I don't want to hurt Dave, so I can be more empathetic and can take my power more seriously. I think once you get into a faceless number of people, it's hard to have empathy, and therefore it's just like, well.
And then like power just bigs up your ego.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wouldn't want my ego to be in charge of me. Like, never mind in charge of a country. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't trust it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not a nice person. Like, it's not a trustworthy, nice person.
No, because it's that paradox, isn't it? You ideally, the person in charge is the person who doesn't want power. That's who you want there to make moral, philosophical decisions. But that's not who gets there.
Yeah.
The person who gets there is the person who's willing to take it.
Yeah, true. Sometimes smart people get there, yeah, but you can see it is.
Oh, they can be smart, but
why do you want it? Like, why? Yeah, it's a very. We need to get the phones out and just total democracy. Get rid of this stuff.
Brexit the sequel.
Brexit the sequel. Yeah, total democracy. Obviously, there'd be a bit of teething problems at the start, but
we'd have a few bloody coups, and then after that,
yeah.
Well, speaking of total democracy, then, if you today, right now, if you had everyone can vote on their phone.
We'd be at war, wouldn't we?
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. We would, definitely.
Yeah.
And
do you think would that be a good outcome, you reckon?
No.
Every time you bring up this total democracy thing, I'm just like, would that be a good thing? No.
Can you imagine if everybody in the country had their phone and it was like, should we declare war on Russia? Yeah. And like, you have Tyson Fury, you have a couple of boxers, you have a couple of footballers, and they'd be all like, let's get him.
Yeah.
You know, it would, Jesus, like, it'd be overwhelming, wouldn't it?
Do you know how we could turn it to our advantage? Misinformation campaign. We tell everyone we're going to war, right?
Yeah.
And then all like I defend the nation, I defend this island, so rule Britannia. They're all Scottish. You get them down to Dover, get them into the boats, and we just ship them off. Just, we'll send them to like, I don't know,
Where?
the Isle of Wight or something. And all those people who would think they can fight a war in Ukraine with a cricket bat, they can all just go live in the Isle of Wight for a little while. Think about their actions and their attitudes.
There'd be no one left, Tom.
Well, that's my secret plan for advancing in comedy. Just clear out.
Clear everyone out.
Yes, clear everyone out. Yeah.
It's kind of too, was it World War II where people were convinced it would be over, they'd be back in a couple of months.
Yeah.
Like absolutely 100% convinced that they'd be back in a couple of months. But look, I guess that whole thing, history is over, wasn't true.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that? Wasn't that the one when the Berlin Wall came down?
Yeah.
Would a world dominated by Russia, would there be cultural changes? What's Russian food like?
Some of it's pretty good. I mean, caviar's pretty good.
Caviar, yeah.
Borscht's good. They do really good fish, like smoked fish and stuff, white fish. It's quite similar to, I guess, a lot of like Jewish food. You get like a lot of that really nice stuff like that.
The Israeli Prime Minister's gone over to talk to Putin.
Has he?
Yeah. He has said he would mediate between the two countries. Kind of sort of wondering why is he getting
What's your game?
Yeah, but I suppose there's Jewish people, a lot of Jewish people in Ukraine and Russia.
Of course.
And But it just seems a bit funny, like.
But I think it's back to that power thing, I think it's like there's a vacuum. Like America doesn't want to step in because it's too big a deal. Britain's kind of the same boat. Big European. France is going through an election, and he's probably like, I don't know, I can get some mileage out of this, get some shine, get some global notoriety, offering to mediate.
Offering to mediate. It's interesting. Yeah, it's a very interesting angle. He didn't announce that he was going there. He went over. He had a 2.5 hour meeting, one-on-one with Putin, and then he announced it afterwards. So no one knew he was going.
Is there any like natural resource links between those places? I know Israel is always trying to forge alliances because obviously geopolitically, historically, they're in a very vulnerable position.
Yeah.
So they're always trying to forge alliances where they can to secure resources or aid. Because I know, like for example, for the Iraq War, the reason Australians have a really favourable visa relationship with America is because Paul Rudd, the Prime Minister of Australia at the time, was like, yes, we'll send some troops if you make it easier for businesses to trade with America and for Australian citizens to live there.
Yeah.
And he was like, done. So you wonder if there's something that the Israeli PMs like...
So countries have interest in mix. Kenya and, I hope I'm getting this right, Kenya and Israel get on really well.
Right.
Because there was a plane hijacked once and the Mossad, the Israeli Secret Service, stormed it. But it was in Nairobi airport.
Right.
And the Kenyan authorities let them. And after that, Israel was like, cheers.
Good on you,
cheers, lads. And gave them a bit of money and helped them out with a bit of aid. And like, seemingly, at UN meetings and stuff, they always get on. So there's all countries who have
strange little
relationships.
link-ups.
Yeah, that can be, from an obscure event, but it has bonded them together from that time on,
I wonder if... I just wonder if there's any scenario, because the West has got to give Putin a way out of this, and I wonder if he needs to. You're a big Napoleon guy.
Yeah.
I wonder if he needs to, not as in because he's short and has ideas to conquer most of Europe, but Napoleon was given an exit. He was given an exile. He was given a gentle way out, so they didn't have to become like a caged animal trying to fight for his life. What is that plan?
We'll give you a beta.
We'll
give you a beta. You can bring the girls over, sing the song. I want a man like Putin.
Oh my God, that's a good place to end.
Yeah, very good.
That's been another episode of Tom and Jack having the crack. Cheers, guys.
Thank you. No, it's a lot harder when you're hungover.
Do you want to correct you, but Borscht is actually Ukrainian.
Oh,
there you go. You should jump in though.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. If you
I
want.
really want to, but I just felt a bit.